All right.
All right.
So let's get started. You're in the hot seat. Donna, I want you to tell us about your journey from the Bronx to North Carolina, here to Washington, D.C. Tell us about what that's been like for you and where you've come from and how you got to be here sitting with us today.
Fantastic. But before I answer that question, I just have to echo, Sharon, what you have been doing, bringing young women together is something that is very needed and should not be taken lightly because this doesn't happen everywhere. And so kudos to you for doing this. But also kudos to the other honorees because you all have done such an amazing job. I'm going to pause. With the former honorees, would you please stand for a second so people can see who you are? And it's because of these women that this continues to go on over and over again. So thank you for what you've shared with students in the past, but also for being able to have us go on and do this and be here today. So with that, yes, I grew up in the Bronx, also known as the Boogie Down. I did an undergraduate degree at NC State University. Yeah. All right, whoop that. And so I was having dinner with some friends last week, and they said, well, how'd you decide to go to NC State? And usually when people ask me that question, I say, I had a great engineering program, and I was interested in engineering. But I decided I wanted to be really honest and authentic and say, in 1983, I was watching the NCAA championship between NC State and Houston with my daddy. And I said, it was an amazing game. Go back and check. I know most of you weren't born yet, but go back and check the game. It was a fantastic game. And I was just interested in the university. And that's how I decided to go apply to NC State University. And so that's how I ended up at NC State University. How I ended up as a computer science major. For those of you who know me, you would find that really hilarious that I was a computer science major. It's because that's what people say I should do. Right? You're smart, you should be a doctor, a lawyer, you should major in computer science, none of which I should have done. And so I went to NC State, I majored in computer science. I remember my first project, I stayed in a lab all night, went back to my dorm, brushed my teeth, went to class, and I got a C on the project. And I was devastated. I'm like, wait, what? So I did exactly what you said I was supposed to do, but I missed a few dots, and I got a C. And it wasn't that I gave up on computer science. I realized it wasn't for me. I wasn't excited about it. I wasn't passionate about it. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make myself excited about it. And so I took an accounting class, and I loved the accounting class. I know that sounds really geeky. It just was really something that was interesting and easy for me, and I enjoyed it. And so I decided to major in accounting. And I met some wonderful, amazing people, and I decided if I was going to major in accounting when I graduated, I wanted to work for the best company there would be. And so I decided to go work for, back then was the Big 8, KPMG. And I had planned to be a partner. It was part of my path. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And I had started my career in New York and then fell in love and moved to DC and still stay with KPMG. But 10 years in, I decided, like, I don't really want to do this. If I have to review one more work paper, just shoot me now, right? So I remember going into the managing partner, who was a man of color, who actually started the National Association of Black Accountants, and was hopeful that by the time he retired, he would have someone, a person of color, who would replace him as a partner. And I was a little nervous going to him and saying, it's not going to happen. This is not what I want to do. And he was very understanding and said, I get it. I understand it's not what you want to do. Fast forward, I knew someone who worked for Marriott. I went to Marriott for an exploratory interview. They liked me, they hired me. I didn't know what the job was going to be. They said we could always use smart, talented people, and so we needed to strengthen our bench. And so we'll have you come in. And I remember going for that interview, and the person I was going to report to was an amazing man from England, just brilliant, compassionate, wonderful person. And I met another woman who was over the financial reporting. I was like, I don't know what she does, but I don't want her job, right? So I start the job, and 30 days into the job, this amazing manager says, you know what, I want to be an entrepreneur. So he left. A week later, the person who I said, whatever she does, I don't want that job. She seems really stressed out and not really happy. They're like, Donna, you know what? We found a job for you. We want you to do this work. So I tell you that story for a couple of reasons. One, while it's always important to make sure you like the people that you're going to go and work for, make sure it's not just one person that you like. And so that's how I ended up at Marriott. I did a whole bunch of things at Marriott. If you've got questions, we can kind of talk through that. And while I was at Marriott, I decided to go back to school and get my MBA. And then someone called me up and said, are you interested in a senior vice president, a finance controller job in DC? And I was in Germany at the time, working on an assignment. And I said, sure, let's talk about it when I get back to DC area. And I talked to the person. He said, BET is looking for a senior vice president and controller. And I was like, I'm not really interested. And so I gave him because I had interviewed with BET 15 years prior to that, and it wasn't right for me. And so a recruiter called me up after I had already given a bunch of names of talented people they should consider. A recruiter called me up. I was like, I already said I'm not really interested. Thank you very much. And then another recruiter called me up and dropped the name of someone who I really admired and respected. I'm like, oh. And so I said, I always tell people you have to be open to the possibilities. So Don, be open to the possibilities and follow your own advice, right? And so I went in for the interview and decided to take the job. And lots of changes happened as part of this journey. And so part of the reason I decided to go work for BET, I always tell people I didn't leave Marriott, I joined BET. Because one of the things I got from the Smith School was this learning about transformational leaders. And I really wanted to be this transformational leader, and I had this burning desire to actually apply some of the things that I had learned in the Smith School. And so when I heard they were looking for someone to be a leader for a team that wasn't broken but really needed a strong leader, I decided to come to BET. And one of the things someone has suggested I do when I came is like, you've really got to get to know your team. You really got to get to know your team. This is where the weight gain started. And so I would take my leadership team individually out to dinner and just wanted to get to know them. Like, what are your aspirations? What are you afraid of? What are what's next for you? How can I help you? I'm not asking for anything in return. I just want to know who you are and what do you want and how can I help you? And so I felt like I was developing this bond with people who did not have a great leader before me. And so fast forward, 100 days into my job, I get a call from my boss, and he says, by the way, your job's going away. And so I'm like, where are the cameras? This is funny, right? And so I remember leaving the office, and I went home, and I told my husband, and he said, well, you have a 2-year contract, you should just quit. And I'm like, I'm not a quitter. And I've just connected with these people who really needed a strong leader. And I told them, what can I do for you? I'm here for you. I want to help you grow. I want to help you develop. And now I'm going to say, you're going to go through a life-changing event because these people are going to lose their job. And by the way, because I've got a 2-year contract, I'm out. I didn't think that was the right thing to do. And so I decided to stay and help through the transition. And from helping through that transition, it was a really tough time. But I felt like some of the things we did in terms of getting people, training and resume writing, just being compassionate. I kept a bunch of boxes of Kleenex in my office to help people get through that. I think people landed in a really good place. And fast forward, I've done a few other things at BET, and now my role has expanded beyond finance. That includes operations and live events and research. And the funny thing is, like, for one of the live events, I've got to pick talent for our event. And my daughter laughed when I started talking about like Lil Uzi Vert and Cardi B, and my colleagues laughed too. They're like, Donna, we know you don't know who those people are.
The story that you just told, first of all, I like want to quiz our MBA students. What aspect of transformational leadership did Donna just describe? But I'm thinking that it is. It's because it's individualized consideration, like to the T. I'm also thinking of some of the cases that we teach in our classes, and I'm like, that right there, I need to write that up, and that should be the case that we're teaching, right? We should learn about people from our own. I want to turn to a slightly different topic. Sharon touched on the Me Too movement, but I think we also, most of us in the room recognize that sometimes these issues, women of color are facing different issues than just the sexual harassment. And so I want to ask you about a time, and I know this gets maybe a little bit personal, but we talked about it a little bit, about a time when you were judged or questioned or treated differently because you are African American, if you don't mind sharing that with us.
Sure. So I started my career at KPMG. And I remember as my career progressed, and I became a supervising senior manager, so the leader of the group, whenever we would walk into a new client, no one ever assumed I was the leader. It was either a white male, a white female, a black male. It was never, because this person right here happened to be the leader of the team. And so I got used to that, and that was fine. But I remember earlier than that, I walked into a client, and I'm young. I'm not really sure exactly what I'm doing, but I know I've got to go and interview the CFO and ask him about some expenses. And so I go in to meet with him, and he says to me, should I judge you as a white man, a white woman, or how should I judge you? Or should I lower my standards and judge you as a black woman? This is what a man actually said to me. And I laughed it off. I was really uncomfortable with it. And I remember going to my manager and sharing it with her and the partner on the job, and both of them who were women, and sharing that story with them. And they were like, that's just for Reed. That's just how he is. Don't pay him any mind. And I remember going to the client, and these two women were there. And he treated them so badly, and they were okay with it. And then I also remember having partners like use the N-word like it was okay, and going to the one black partner in the New York office and sharing my story with him. And while I felt like he did the best he could in terms of giving me guidance and direction, the advice really was basically to ignore it. And so, sort of fast forward, right? And I think like, wow, if I had that opportunity right now, what would I say? I would still be. I don't think I would have pretended that it didn't bother me, because it did bother me. I won't say I didn't know enough and didn't have enough confidence in myself to say to him, like, this is not okay. Like, you're talking to me in a way that's just not okay. And let me explain to you, and let me give you a little bit of history of black women in this country, which might have been helpful for him. And I think I would have went to the two women and said, like, you're doing yourselves a disservice, and you're doing me a disservice, because leaders lead by example. And I come to you with someone who has treated me badly. I don't care how much money this client has given to us. I expect you to act on it.
Mm-hmm. So that was my
That's just a couple of examples.
That was my next question. You work for this brand now, BET, that's highly regarded for investing in the African American community. That's part of their whole mission. And what would you say to someone that comes to you that has this sort of experience? I mean, is there any advice at confronting someone? It seems like might be something you can say, but I think that's scary for a lot of us.
I think here's what I always tell people about, we talk about the Me Too movement, or being treated differently because you're a person of color, or different. I never want to tell someone you should go and confront. Like if I talk to my daughter, I would give that advice to my daughter. Because why I can give that advice to my daughter? Because if I told her to speak up for yourself, if she lost her job, she can come home with me, and I can take care of her. But if someone is sitting here and they're the sole breadwinner and they have no other resource and no other means to take care of their family, that might be a little bit scary and a little bit tricky, right? And so I'm really sensitive about the advice that I give to people and how to handle those things. What I do say to people is handle it in a way that makes you feel whole, that enables you to look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm okay with the decision that I've made. And just be conscious about the decision that you make. And so I feel badly about how I handled the situation because someone came behind me and he treated this person the same way. And that person didn't handle it very well. And because he didn't have the support, it rocked his career and not in a positive way. And so I'm always mindful of what I do, how it impacts the next person. But I'm also mindful of the fact that not everyone feels comfortable. It doesn't mean you're weak or strong. You've got to do what works for you in your household, in your career, in your goals, and your aspirations. But again, as long as you can look yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm making a conscious decision. I'm okay with this, but I would encourage you, if you're facing any of those types of situations, to talk to someone. It doesn't have to be someone at work. It doesn't have to be you, but just talk to someone to give you just a listening ear.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thanks for sharing that. So you've talked about some of the people that you've worked with. I wanted to ask a little bit about mentors and sponsors in your career. I know you've had male mentors and female mentors, and so I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how they helped kind of cultivate you along your career path.
So, I mean, studies show that women, and particularly women of color, are the least likely to have mentors and sponsors. I was fortunate to have mentors and sponsors, and early on, most of those mentors and sponsors were white men. I had them at KPMG, who would make sure I was on assignments, not the biggest assignments, but the assignments that would give me the greatest experience. Because quite frankly, early on, getting the experience and not the big shiny object is the thing that really matters, and it's the thing that's going to help you grow and develop and propel your career. At Marriott, I had wonderful male leaders, mentors, sponsors. The current CEO of Marriott, Arne Sorensen, was the CFO when I was in investor relations, and I remember we were on a bus together doing some volunteer work on the bus ride home. He sat next to me and he said, "So Donna, what are you going to do next?" And I'm like, "Okay, I hadn't really planned what was next for me." Okay. And so as a result of that conversation, I told him some of the things I was interested in doing, some of the jobs I had applied for, but I didn't have an MBA, and so therefore I couldn't get the role, but I was interested in doing certain things. And so he went back to human resources, and they came back and actually created a rotation for me. And they hadn't done this for any vice president ever in recent history of the company. And so he thought enough of me and thought enough of my ability and my skill and the fact that I would add some value to the company to be able to do that. I've had some great examples of, and I don't want to say I haven't had any women who have helped me, but the challenge is there weren't enough of those women in those leadership positions to actually be able to do something. And so I'm just really mindful of when you are given an opportunity, you can't just sit there and say, "I've made it, thank you, Jesus," and y'all figure it out on your own, right? So I think it was Jesse Jackson, and when he was running in 1984, I'm dating myself. I keep notes, like when I see things that are inspiring to me, I actually keep them in my notes, and I go back from time to time and I look at them. And I was looking at something, and I think it was from his 1984 when he was running for president. And he said, when you get to the top of the elevator, send it back down. And so oftentimes some people are just so happy to have made it. You forget that I don't want to be the only executive woman of color. I don't want to be the only executive woman. And so to reach back and to help someone else. I had there's a person who currently works at Marriott, who I work for, who just gave me great advice about how to lead, and he led by example. Some of the things that I did when I got to BET, this wasn't, I can't take credit for the idea. The ideas came from talking to him, getting ideas from him. And then I came to BET and worked for Deborah Lee, the CEO and chairman, and how wonderful and amazing that experience has been to actually go to work every day where the person who is running the network is a woman of color who is facing all kinds of adversity. And what I love so much about working for her is that I'm a finance person, but I weigh in on programming decisions, I weigh in on marketing decisions. She always says, I don't care where the idea comes from, as long as it's a good idea. And when Viacom tried to steal me away from her, she created another opportunity for me so that I could stay and expand my role. So I will say I really have been blessed by people who, you heard in the video, I say, my success is because, hard work and determination, but because there were some people who actually thought enough of me to give me the opportunity.
We have a faculty member who does some research on women and how a lot of times in organizations they'll promote one woman and then it's like the door shuts. And so sometimes there's actually structural issues that we're overcoming to help each other out. I also want to point out there's this idea of deliberate practice, where if you want to get really good at something, you kind of examine yourself doing that and keep working at it, And it sounds like in a lot of ways that's what you've done with your leadership. You've taken advice from people, you've put it into practice, you've been reflective on it. And so I want to turn to talking a little bit about the Executive MBA and taking that. I know I see a lot of my MBA students here. I see a lot of my undergrad students here who might be considering it down the line. Maybe talk a little bit about how you took advantage of that experience, maybe the things that you struggled with, but those are the things that you would sort of tell them, hey, don't leave here without doing this.
Right. You heard me mention earlier that I had applied for some jobs and I couldn't get the jobs because they didn't look at my experience, they looked at the fact that I didn't have the MBA. And so when this rotation was created for me, it was the first time in my career that I did not have a deadline-driven job. And so what does this very driven person do? Like, oh, I've got free time. Let me go back to school and get my MBA. And so that's what I did. And I will tell you, when I came to the Smith School, I really came because, one, someone said I needed to have an MBA. Two, I felt like I needed to have some more finance classes. But I got so much more than that. So if I left here with only that, it would have been a complete waste of my time. What I got from that is, we talk about this transformational leader. I got an opportunity to do lots of introspection and think about like who I am and what I want to be and how I want to be, how I want to show up at work. Negotiations, that was really fun and exciting.
It's favorite class.
Yeah. I learned a little bit of marketing that I can apply. I know enough to be dangerous. But I also got an opportunity to be in a classroom with other executives who had a wide range of experience, and that we could sort of push one another. And we didn't always think alike. We didn't always agree, and that pushing is what enabled. Like, I don't want to be in a classroom where everyone agrees with everything I think and everything I say, and vice versa. That does no one any good. We didn't really have that experience. Camilla, right? We didn't have that experience, right? Or Helena. And so that for me was really, really amazing. The coaching, and for those of you who know Dr. Joyce Russell, not only was she my professor, but she was my coach too. And so the coaching was phenomenal. And so we got an opportunity, real life, while I'm working and dealing with issues at work, had a coach who could coach me through it. Negotiation class, real life techniques and skills that I was learning that I could actually go back and apply to negotiations. But I met some amazing people, three of them who are here, and I'm glad they are here today, who I can call on about anything, any idea. We bounce ideas off of each other. We support one another. We cheer each other on. And so I encourage people to, if you're considering doing the Executive MBA program, as Helena used to say when we were here, it's like drinking out of a fire hose, I'm not gonna lie. It is challenging, it is a sacrifice, but I think it is a sacrifice that is very well worth it, and I encourage you to do it.
Awesome. So you mentioned a little bit ago the Viacom trying to steal you away. You had this opportunity, and we also talked to this in the context of this false narrative that there's some sort of perfect like work-life balance, that we can just balance the scales and it'll all be perfect. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the decision that you ultimately made, which I'll let you reveal, and how your family was involved in that decision.
So I got a call from Viacom, and they said, we've got this wonderful opportunity for you. We want you to move to New York and come and work for our corporate office. And I remember going home and telling my husband about it. He was like super excited about it. He said, I can do my job anyway. It's good. It's a great opportunity for you. Like there are no women of color in the finance area, or really in the corporate office. There are 2 women of color in the corporate office, but none in the finance area. And so a couple things I thought about is, I'm like, wow, if I move, what's going to happen to my team? And my husband's like, there you go again. You always worry about your team. When are you going to start worrying about you? What about us, right? And so what I said, well, I want us to let's talk to the kids, right? He's like, no, the kids don't get a chance. They don't get a choice, right? Right? And so I see when my friends came up there, I was having this conversation with her as we were making this decision. And I remember sitting at the dinner table with the kids, and like, I'm really nervous. I'm nervous about talking to my kids about this opportunity, because we have a wonderful village. We have a wonderful village, all who are sitting here, of people who help us with the kids. We help each other's kids out. We go to each other's kids' events. We're there to support each other. And so anyway, we sit at the kitchen table, and I'm really worried about my daughter, right? Because she's a freshman in high school. And I'm like, oh my God. And I remember Joyce Russell, when she went to become the dean at Villanova, and her daughter was a freshman in high school, how devastated her daughter was. So that's all in my mind as I'm having this conversation. So I said to my kids, I said, we've got 3 choices. Mommy's been offered an opportunity. This opportunity is a great opportunity, and these opportunities don't come around that often. And so we've got 3 choices we can make as a family. I can move to New York. We can all move to New York. I can move to New York and see how I like it for about 6 months or so. And if I like the job and I think it's the right thing to do, you all can come and move as well. I said, or I can turn the job down. I said, keep in mind, if I turn the job down, it's quite possible that I'll be blackballed, because you don't turn these types of jobs down. So those are the options. What do we want to do? So, so my son, who I'm not worried about, like, he's gonna be fine. He starts crying. I was so not ready for that. So he starts crying, and my daughter, who's full of wisdom, turns to my son. She's 14 at the time, and my son is 10 at the time. Turns to him and said, Donovan, Mommy's pretending that we have an option. We don't really have a choice. And then this was a kicker. She's like, you need to face the harsh reality of the real world. Yep, that's what she said. And so we continued to talk about it, and I started looking at schools and started looking at places to live and talking to people, and it was really stressful trying to figure out where to live and where to go to school, et cetera, and then negotiating my salary, and I didn't like it, so we're negotiating some more, and I didn't like it, so we're negotiating some more, and I didn't like it. But then I thought about it, and I was like, if I move to New York for this job and take the family with me, it's a new job. They're not gonna see me anyway, right? I'm gonna be working, and I would feel awful if I brought my family to New York. My husband had to find new clients in New York. My kids have to leave their school and their family and their friends and come to New York, and I'm gonna be working. And so, as things would have it, and so when I went to talk to the CEO of BET, and she knew that Viacom wanted me to come work for him, she said, wait a minute. I really want you to stay. And I was like, well, I'm really interested in operations. I can do more than finance. And she created this wonderful role for me that totally, the role doesn't make any sense, right? I'm over finance, research, travel, security, live events, ancillary revenue. She's like, I'm just gonna throw the kitchen sink at you. You can't turn it. There's gonna be something in it that you like to do. and that's how it worked out. So.
Before we get to the lightning round, I want to do one more hot topic question.
Sure.
So we talked about the Me Too movement. We've talked a little bit about your experiences as a woman of color in the workplace, but have you experienced any of the sexual harassment, the casual things or more serious things that you wouldn't mind sharing with us? And then maybe, again, a little bit of talk, you've told us be happy with yourself when you walk away at the end of the day, but how you might deal with that differently now.
So the EEOC reports that roughly 25% of women experience sexual harassment in the workplace. I don't know where they get the number from. I don't know where the number came from. Only because that number surprised me, because I thought it actually would be higher. But a couple things. 75% of the women who actually report they've been sexually harassed receive some sort of retaliation. And then it's estimated that roughly 90% of women who have experienced sexual harassment never file a formal complaint. With 75% having retaliation, you would see why. And this has a huge impact as a finance person on the bottom line, right? Sick leave, productivity is low. People are turnover. They're leaving the organization, so you got to refill those positions. I'm hopeful that those stats about the retaliation and the not reporting will change. As a young professional, I can't tell you the kinds of conversations that I would hear, inappropriate conversation. I can't tell you how many clients talked about my body. I can't tell you how, a few times I've been sort of touched inappropriately by a client as a young woman. And I handled, and it was interesting. So, and I didn't, when someone treated me a different way because I was a woman of color and said something racial, I was a lot more comfortable going to someone and saying something about it, or a black partner, a black manager. But this I was really uncomfortable with, because I felt like if I go and complain, and I had one particular client where I actually was put on the client because no one wanted to be on the client because the controller and the CFO were saying inappropriate things to these young women, and they felt really uncomfortable. And I was like, Donna, you can go, you can handle it. I'm like, yeah, of course I know I can handle it. I'm a tough woman from the Bronx. Didn't think that I would have that same experience, but I did. And so fast forward, clearly for me, because again, if I lose my job today, because I've been able to save a little money, and I have a husband who has some, if I lose my job today, I would be okay. But not everyone has that experience. And when we talk about this Me Too movement, and it's not just Hollywood, it's not just in corporate America. It's the housekeeper at the hotel. It's the cashier at Burger King. It is a cultural thing. It is something that we as a country, as a nation, have got to say, this is unacceptable. Mm-hmm. And we've got to do something about it so that my daughter and your daughters and you all, when you get ready to get out here, you don't have to have that same experience. I can't promise you that you won't, because I think it's a thing that's going to take some time for us to do something about it. Here's what I know will change it. when the people who are sitting in this room are at the head of the table. When the people who are sitting in this room are making the decisions. When the people who are sitting in this room are the ones who set the culture for an organization. When the people who are sitting in this room are examples for more young girls to say, oh, I want to be a leader. I want to be able to do that. I think when you have more women leaders, things will absolutely change. And so that's why I need every one of you sitting here to make sure y'all study hard. There'll be times when you will get discouraged and you say, oh, I don't feel like studying. I don't feel like doing this. I am counting on you, and there are young girls who are counting on you to get out here and make a difference. And if you don't listen to anything else I say today, please listen to that. That people are counting on you to lead, and because you're sitting here, I know you have that ability to do that. And I haven't even spoken to you, and I believe in you and believe what's possible for you.
Give us 3 adjectives to capture the true, authentic Donna.
Compassionate, persistent, driven.
What's the best piece of advice you've received from your children?
My son, who's not here, I won't say his advice he's given to me, but he is very kind and is mindful and really thinks the entire world ought to be kind. And as a mother, it makes me proud. As a mother, it makes me scared that he's going to grow up one day and realize, as I try to share with him, the world is not necessarily kind. And so he reminds me that there are kind people and that we ought to be kind to one another. The best piece of advice my daughter has given me, she tells me, Mommy, stop working so hard.
If you could have a gigantic billboard that could get a message out to millions, what would your billboard say?
Be kind, be humble, be grateful.
What advice should these college graduate students, what advice should they get as they go out into the real world that they should ignore?
When anyone tells you you can't do something, you shouldn't try something. Ignore it. Figure it out on your own. You may stumble, you may fall, but you've got to figure it out on your own.
What do you do to take care of yourself?
Natasha, why are you looking a little bit? One thing, I recently hired a personal trainer.
Oh.
And so I'm doing that now. I used to work out on a normal basis, but I won't say a couple of my friends who are sitting here who moved, and I blame them for the fact that I don't work out as much. I make sure I get a physical every single year. I make regular manicure and pedicure appointments with my daughter. That's our bonding time. We go every 2 weeks. And periodically, I will take a stress day. I will take if I don't get a day off today, you're going to see the Donna you don't want to see. And so I know sometimes I need to take a mental health day. And so.
Last question, very important. Flats or heels and why?
So I've been wearing high heels since I was 15 years old when my daddy brought home a bunch of shoes, and the only shoes that were in a size 10 were the high heels. And so that's how I started wearing high heels. And then as I started to wear them, I noticed they made my legs look nice, and so I like that. But it also, like, as a woman who was tall, and when I was younger, I was a little self-conscious about being tall, and as I grew and became more comfortable with that, I didn't want to wear flats because I didn't want anyone to think I was ashamed of being tall. And quite frankly, I loved towering over all those men who people thought was my boss.
Hello, Ariel Bowie, first-year MBA candidate, full-time. So can you tell me something, what really surprised you within your first year of being with BET?
Well, what really surprised me was when they told me they're going to lay off all the people who I had been brought in to actually lead the team. The other thing that surprised me is because when I came from Marriott, And Marriott is really a finance-led organization, right? So a lot of people who were in the leadership positions were finance people, and it was interesting working in a creative environment. We're creative leads, and finance is not necessarily seen as the nice, friendly person there to help. But I fixed that and changed that a little bit, so that's what surprised me.
Thank you so much.
Do we have more than one microphone? Are you walking around with the microphone, or are you asking a question?
I'm walking around.
Okay, awesome. Let's get back in here. We have a couple. Kelsey. Kelsey's an undergrad, and she's my student. Let her talk.
Thank you. Oh, my name is Kelsey Edwards. I'm a senior information systems and government and politics double major. What is the most challenging part of your current position, and how have you overcome it, or how are you overcoming it?
So, interestingly enough, the most challenging part of my job right now is dealing with talent. And that kind of surprised me, because the finance work I've been doing a lot. Research is just really interesting for me. I think just what's happening in the television industry in general is challenging. And as a member of the senior leadership team, just trying to figure out how do we get content to our audience who is unplugging, how do we reach the millennials, how do we monetize these dollars, how do we, as an organization that is for the Black audience and lovers of Black culture, how do we remain relevant when people think like Black culture is pop culture? And so when BET was founded, there was no other place for you to turn to see people of color in any significant way. And now you can turn on just about any channel and see people of color. And so just trying to figure out how we remain unique and how we remain authentic, and how we can present ourselves to our advertisers in a way that says, come spend your dollars with us, because we will reach an audience, a broader audience, faster than you will elsewhere.
Good evening. My name is Neha. I'm a marketing analytics grad student. So my question is that you're definitely a caring mom, a driven woman, and you've definitely had to organize yourself a lot on your way up to success. Sometimes when we're trying to balance family and our work and everything and our dreams, things come crashing down, and usually at the same point of time. So in that situation, when you've only had one option to choose, it could either be your family because they need you too, and there's this important thing going on at work. What have you chosen, and what are the things that you've considered while choosing those?
I think for me, when I talk to folks about work-life balance, and you'll hear me talk about it as being a false narrative, is this notion that everything's got to be 50-50, right? I think you've got to decide what's important to you at what particular time. So there will be times when it's all about, when I was in grad school, I was really focused on, like, school was the most important, and it was more important than work. When my mother was sick, my mother was the most important. She was more important than work. I spent more time with her than I did with my husband and my kids. And so I just decided what's important to me at that time, because if I miss out on this opportunity, like, how will I feel? And so, if my daughter's having a recital, that's important to me, I'm going to go. If my son's having a basketball game, that's important to me, I'm going to go. If my daughter says, Mom, I want you to come and meet with all the other dancers, moms are having an event, that's really not that important to me. So I'm probably
Two more questions. Oh, so many hands. I don't know. We haven't gone to this part of the room. So let's get this young lady in the red over here.
Okay.
I think they have an advantage if they're my student.
Hello. Thank you so much for speaking today. My name is Brianna. I'm a senior government and politics major, and I have one question. oftentimes as Black women, we are stereotyped as being aggressive and angry and like overbearing. And I want to know, how as a Black woman do you balance between being an effective leader and avoiding the aggressive Black woman's narrative?
Wow.
Very good.
I'm glad I called on her.
So I often tell people, please don't take my kindness for weakness. And so I'm just by nature a compassionate person and care about how people feel. But at the same time, if I have to make a tough decision, I will make a tough decision. And if I have a big thing about being disrespected, and if I feel like I'm being disrespected, I let people know that I feel like I'm being disrespected. But I'm a positive person, so I don't walk into a space with an attitude. I give people the benefit of the doubt, but I'm not going to be silent, right? And so, when I was at the Smith School, Joyce Russell gave me a book, and it actually pulled out an excerpt from the book, and it was talked about likability, and how when women say things. Like if you go to negotiate a salary, and if you say it a certain way, and if people don't like you, you won't get it. But if a man says it the same exact way, people are not offended by it. I show up in a way that is me, and I give my opinion. I voice my opinion. I never want anyone to see me as being weak. And if I feel like someone is taking advantage, I will say to them, please never take my kindness for weakness.
That's a great line. Okay, one last question.
My question is, how have you or how do you plan to lift women up under you to help them excel with their aspirations, and also how should we do that?
If anyone, I talk to young women all the time. I am here because someone lifted me up, and to hear other women. If someone was sitting here, I'd be sitting where you are and would be inspired and happy to see someone who is sitting here and providing some guidance and some direction. But I often tell people, once you get to where you are, you've got to reach back, and you've got to help people out. I do that in the way that I show up at work and advocate for women, for opportunities that come up. I mentor women. I put my money where my mouth is and make sure that I provide opportunities for women who are struggling to get a quality education. And if anyone calls me and says, "Donna, I want to talk to you," I try to make myself available. As long as my daughter doesn't have a recital, my son has a basketball game. But I think it's important, particularly like this piece on education. With education, there's a responsibility. There's a responsibility to do something other than make profits for yourself or for your company. There's a responsibility to go and work in the community. There's a responsibility to mentor a young person or tutor a young person who needs help. There is a responsibility to, if you're making some money, to actually help someone else who may need some help along the way. Don't just get this degree and say it's all about me. Like, you have a responsibility once you walk the stage to actually give back, to show up. And I realize that people are always watching. And so, because I know people are always watching, like, I'm mindful of that. I'm mindful of how I show up. I'm mindful of the way I dress at work. I'm mindful of the way I speak at work. I'm mindful of the way I treat people. I'm mindful of the way, like, who am I advocating for and why am I advocating for that? I'm mindful of that, and I just encourage everyone to just be mindful that people are watching, and they're looking for you for some hope and some inspiration and some guidance and what's possible for them and how they ought to show up.